I had to remember how many people had gone through before me with less training, with less abilities, and still made it through. And with just kind of repeating that in my head over and over and over again was enough to get me through to the end. Because it's only 10 weeks. Like, there is an end point. It's just another thing you have to do to jump through hoops to be a soldier in the Army.
Hello. Welcome to the Flute 360 podcast, where we incorporate a panoramic view of flute-related topics. I am your host, Heidi K. Begay, and this is episode 113, Military Flutists with Specialist Allison Wollam. Today's sponsor is brought to you by J&K Productions. Did you know that not only are they a production company for podcasts, but they are a recording company for musicians? Any musical recording needs that you may have, J&K Productions can fulfill that need. They have all the necessary equipment and expertise to record your next flute recording for college or graduate auditions, competitions, summer festivals, or a flute album. J&K Productions can record any setup imaginable, from solo flute, small chamber, flute and piano, and much more. Consider J&K Productions for your next recording project. Contact them at jkproductions.media. Hi, Allison.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am fantastic, enjoying the quarantine as much as I possibly can.
Yes.
I imagine you're keeping yourself busy as well, not just with the podcast.
Oh, I am. It's funny because the quarantine, not much of my life has changed. I've actually been working from home quite a bit this past year. And so when people said, oh, we're going on lockdown, I was like, okay. So I'm still working on the couch. All right.
Same stuff, different day.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, shoot. It's good to hear your voice. We haven't caught up or seen each other in a while.
You're right. We haven't. It's been, 5 years at least? Longer than that.
Yeah. I was going to tell you, I don't know if you remember this, but you helped me get into a flute studio room at UNT for something TFS related.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. Because I was scrummaging or whatever you say. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I need an extra room, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, I'm so-and-so's TA. I have the key. And then we walked down the hall and you unlocked the door.
That must have been Dr. Clardy's studio then.
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Fun times.
Yeah. I do miss my place in Texas very much, actually.
Do you?
Yeah, I've missed it ever since I left. I loved Texas.
Yeah. No, Texas is great. I can't complain. Everyone's been really sweet to us and work has been solid. So no complaints.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where are you right now? Are you out east?
I am in Lawton, Oklahoma.
Why did I say out east when we're in the same time zone?
Yeah, no, you're fine. I would be lying if I didn't say I do stuff like that still all the time.
I haven't had my espresso yet. I need some more coffee.
I have my Coke Zero for my caffeine hit.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
So if you like, I would love to share with the listeners who you are and a little bit about your musical background.
Sure. So I am Specialist Allison Wollam. I'm in the Army, active duty at the moment. I did my undergrad studying with Trudy Kane at University of Miami, then was Dr. Clardy's teaching fellow at University of North Texas. And in Texas, I was mostly a private teacher. I served on the board with Heidi for the Texas Flute Society and just kind of made my way as a musician playing for the Lone Star Wind Symphony as a sub and different ensembles as needed.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember in Texas you having a very active career. And I just really appreciate just what a fine flutist you are. But not just that, you're just such a kind and special woman and very approachable. And that's, sometimes rare to come by. And so
Heidi, you're making me blush.
Well, luckily it's audio only and no video.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. No, it's good to have friends and colleagues like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. So I'm curious, what inspired you to enroll as a flutist in the U.S. Army Band?
So initially, I joined the National Guard in Pennsylvania. My husband got a job out there as a director of bands at Lock Haven University. And Lock Haven is a beautiful small town, but it's small enough to have things like an Amish hookup post for the horse and buggies when they come into Walmart. Like it's not very densely populated, so they didn't really have a lot of musical opportunities for me to partake in. And I needed something to do. So I started volunteering as the artistic director of the Williamsport Flute Choir, and one of the players that was in it said, "Hey, if you're looking for something else to do, we need a flute player for our band." And I thought that was absolutely perfect because, I just had my daughter. She was a baby. She was like a year old, maybe. And I was like, oh, this is perfect because once I get out of all the training, then I have access to play in a band once a month and 2 weeks out of the summer. So I thought it was the perfect situation that allowed me to be at home with my daughter and help raise her, and also still partake temporarily in music making.
No, that sounds like a really good, healthy balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was part-time?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I did that for a couple of years, and then I just needed more. So once me and my husband split, he went and moved to Oregon, and he now teaches out at Linfield College. But I decided, heck, I do like this job, and I enjoy wearing the uniform. I enjoy bringing joy to soldiers and civilians alike. And so I was like, I'll just go active duty and do this full time.
No, that's really neat. I think it's great when certain positions fit people really well. And I can see this position just fitting you as a person well. So it makes sense. I can see why you pursued it because it fits you like a glove.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So let's kind of go back down memory lane and let's talk about the audition process. What was that like? Who was there? What were the excerpts that they asked?
So the audition process now is different from when I enlisted.
Okay.
But back then, they do what's called an AMPA, which is an Army Music Proficiency Assessment. And that required, at the time, some normal marches and things that end up being what we play, our bread and butter, so to speak. And then after that, it was 3 excerpts of my choice, just contrasting pieces. Can't remember what I played. I know one of them was the Shamanad, because it was something they specifically mentioned as liking. Go figure.
Yeah.
Not my favorite piece in the world, but I even managed to go my entire undergrad and master's degree without playing the Shamanad because I avoided it like the plague. And then I played it for my incoming audition into the Army.
Go figure, right?
And so, yeah, I just did the audition. I played that. And then the day before, you have what's called a quickly prepared packet. And that still is in play for the current audition, where you get the music, like excerpts from chamber music, from band literature, and what have you. And you have 24 hours to prepare it all. Because there are times where we have 24 hours to prepare our music for a performance. And it's stuff we get literally the day before. And so they just want to make sure we have that skill set that we can quickly incorporate new music well enough to get by for a quick mission.
Okay.
And nowadays, it's changed a little bit, especially with COVID being a thing. Now you reach out to a recruiter, one of the band liaisons, and you would find which one is yours on, goarmy.com/bands. And what you would do from there is they would contact you, you enter your information, and the one that's representative for your region contacts you. And then they give you the list. They send you excerpts that you're to learn for the recorded part of the auditions, should you progress to the recorded mandatory part, the final step of the audition. So you can still pick out your own excerpts for your first initial screening. So I talked to Dan McBride, who's the recruiter for the Texas, Oklahoma area. which I believe you talked to, right?
Yes, I did. The form that you're talking about online is really easy and simple to navigate. You just type in your information and a recruiter reaches out within 24 hours. And so he was actually separate from Sergeant McBride. I actually got in cahoots with McBride through Brittany Primavera.
Ah, gotcha.
That was my connection to him. And when I was kind of pursuing and seeing if this path was good for me, which many people don't know, I was looking, I haven't even shared this, but I don't mind at all. These past 2 months, I was looking at potentially playing in either the Marine Corps band, Air Force band, or the Army band. And so the reason why this series was inspired, not just, well, of course, naturally, just all my friends who are military band players and me watching your careers, from the sidelines. But I got into it and got navigating a little bit into this arena for my own life. And as I was getting into this and meeting people, I just thought, wow, this is amazing what these people do and how they serve their country through their instrument. And so that's what inspired the series. And so long story short, in March, I had auditioned for the Marine Corps and I passed the recorded and the live. And I was sitting there with the recruiter and I forget his name, but we decided that it probably wasn't best only because of my age. So with the Marine Corps, their cutoff is 35. And he said, we can do an age waiver, but you would have to enroll into boot camp before your 35th birthday. And I'm 34 and I was 34 back in March. And so I turned 35 on April 7th. And so he was like, you would have to get your body ready for boot camp in less than 30 days. And
oh my goodness. Boot camp's no joke either.
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, well, I'm pretty active. I exercise every day. I run, but not Marine Corps level. I was like, I'm silly, but I'm not that silly. So
you work on your pull-ups too. Marines love their pull-ups.
Yeah, that was the first thing they said. The recruiter there, he goes, so how many pull-ups can you do? And I'm like, none. And he's like, well, you'd have to do 3. I'm like, or minimum 3. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I don't see me doing that in 30 days. So
definitely not.
But it was good to explore that for myself. And then after that, the Army, when I was talking with Sergeant McBride, he did say that, again, the waiver would extend me a little bit past, and they're a little bit, from what I'm understanding, don't quote me on this, for people out there who are interested and, they're like, oh, but Heidi said, this is just from my recollection. I remember him saying that the Army would give me an age waiver, but then I could still go out to boot camp in the June season or the October season, and it wouldn't have to be before the 35th birthday. So there was a little bit more leeway there.
Yeah, in general, the Army tends to be a little bit more lax than the Marines. The Marines are probably, 1, they have the hardest boot camp of any military. And 2, they don't, I hate saying this, but their musicians are not necessarily as educated in music nowadays as the Army is, just because of what the Army has been doing with recruiting musicians. They've been really gearing towards already trained musicians, whereas the Marines really just want someone that can pass boot camp and hold an instrument, and then they teach them their instrument through a 6-month AIT course.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's good to kind of see the differences or similarities between the different military branches for anyone who is kind of, trying to consider one or the other. Yeah. So then I kind of long story short, I kind of just put all of that aside recently because I was just with this COVID and this pandemic happening, I was a little selfish. I'm not going to lie. I was just I don't know if I would be okay with being shipped off, if something were to happen. And it made the decision process very unique considering our situation.
Right. And that makes perfect sense because they were still shipping people from MEPS, which is the medical evaluation center sort of place where they determine that you're healthy enough to be shipped out. And then you automatically go into quarantine for 2 weeks before you even start training. So yes, I would completely understand why you wouldn't at that time want to do that. They did change it though. Now they're not shipping out anyone.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, man, the world we live in, right?
Yeah.
It's nuts. So, yeah. So anything else about the audition process that you want to mention?
Yeah, so you would do your preliminary, which is all of the things that I mentioned. And if you get past the preliminary, then you prepare for the live round, which now with the COVID stuff, it's a recorded round.
Mm.
And so you would play those excerpts that were given to you in an email. Then they'd also email you your quickly prepared packet. They did do away with all of the ceremonial music portion, so we don't have to do that anymore. You do have to pass it at the schoolhouse, but you don't have to do it for your audition. And then that's basically it.
Mm.
It's not a ton of things, but it can be a little stressful for people who are not used to that. But the good news, too, is, if you just get that far, if you get past the preliminary round and you go to the live round, you don't really have to go anywhere. The liaison will come to you and approve. And the only thing after that, after you get through the audition, is then you have to go through the medical evaluations. Yeah, and you have to fill out a ton of background. It's so much paperwork to get into the Army, and so many hoops to jump through. But fortunately, you only have to do it once. And you might go back to MEPS 3 or 4 times in that process, because as normal government is, they might lose a form, or there's some miscommunication somewhere, or you didn't pass a test the first time, like a physical test, and you have to be retested, et cetera, et cetera. Things happen. It can be tedious, but it's really worth kind of sifting through all of that nonsense, because the end result is so much worth it. I might lose a day or 2 of my life to MEPS, but it's worth that sacrifice.
Yeah, really well said. So I'm just curious, because at my Marine Corps audition, they had sight reading, which is expected because that's, very standard, even in an orchestral setting. Mm-hmm. But the recruiter put on the metronome at tempo. Did they do that for you at your live?
No.
Okay.
We don't have a sight reading portion.
Okay.
Our version of that is the quickly prepared packet, because it's not realistic that we would have to go in and just sight read something unless there's like an issue with the person that was assigned that task initially. But for the most part, we have at least a day to look at the music and prepare. So, they're trying to test on a skill that you would use more often, and sight reading doesn't really fit that bill.
Okay. I just had to laugh because I was just like, okay, you're wanting me to sight read Carl Gaylor at
no.
at tempo.
Oh, no.
And I was like, okay.
I hope it was something you'd played before.
It was. I mean, I was like, well, I played this, I think, like 3-4 years ago. Here I go. And he kept the metronome on while I played. And I was like, I have never in, my flute career have been asked to do sight reading at tempo with the metronome on.
Yeah, and Carg Alert is not exactly something that you would want to keep a super strict tempo through. Like, it would sound like trash.
Yeah. I was just, oh my gosh, you should have seen my face. I could not believe it.
Like, what are you doing? It's not always flute players that give the audition. So they just don't know. They're a little ignorant on the things that flute players are required to do.
Yeah. I think that was it. I was just like, I don't think you realize what you're asking me to do right now. Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
No, I didn't have anything like that.
Okay. Oh, man. So you mentioned how boot camp is no joke. Can you talk to us about how you trained for that, how you prepared, what was it like, the whole kit caboodle?
Sure. I was fairly fit. I worked out 5 days a week already, which set me up perfectly for boot camp. For the Army, we don't necessarily call it boot camp. We call it basic combat training, or BCT. Boot camp is definitely more of a Marine sort of thing. But I'd already been fairly fit before I went in, so I didn't really see too much of a struggle. But it is a difficult and grueling training. There are certainly fun parts, like shooting at the range. It was the first time I'd ever held a rifle in my life. And they break down from top to bottom how to take it apart, how to put it back together, the technique needed for shooting. And I found that I really enjoyed rifle marksmanship. enough that now I finally have an expert level shot, which blows me away, by the way.
Oh, that's so cool.
Since I'd never held a rifle before the Army, but.
See, it just goes back to what I said previously. This job just fits you like a glove. I mean, it's just who you are. And I don't know, people see that, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely love my job. And now I beam every time I get to talk about it just because of right, you're right. It just fits me very well. So boot camp ends up being, it's around 10 weeks, give or take. Like the longest it would ever really be would be 10 weeks, unless something happened, like you got injured or from things that I've seen, you've gotten into a fight with another soldier, so they held you back and you had to repeat a phase. But basic training is in 3 phases. So, it's the red, white, and blue phase. The red phase, if you Google shark attack on YouTube and look at those videos, it gives you a really good indication of what that looks like. And it's accurate. Every video I've seen is really accurate. You get off the bus and it's the first time you've seen drill sergeants do drill sergeant things and they're automatically up in your face screaming at you and just like, hurry up. Why are you walking so slow? Get off the bus. Just yelling at you from the beginning to end. And then you have to go find your duffel bag that's in a pile of a bunch of other soldiers' duffel bags, hundreds of duffel bags. And you have to find yours. And they yell at you for not finding it fast enough, of course. And that's kind of how it ends up being. Like the smallest mistake, you will end up getting corrective training for. Commonly known as smoking, but we've tried to get away from calling it that. But colloquially, a lot of people have referred to it as a smoking. And what that means is, like, I remember in the beginning, one of the soldiers called the senior drill sergeant just drill sergeant instead of senior drill sergeant. And we just met him 40 seconds ago. He's like, I think you mean senior drill sergeant. And because of your mistake, your entire platoon is going to suffer for that. So we ended up having to do push-ups on linoleum, which boots, by the way, boots on linoleum and doing push-ups are not the easiest because your feet slide.
Yeah.
So
wow.
And it's just every little thing. I mean, I don't even know how many push-ups I did that day, how many times I ran up and down the stairs and whatnot. It's hard. And even then, once that's over, once you move out of red phase, the drill sergeants become people. And so instead of just these overlords that just rule your entire existence. And you end up getting punished for real things where you still get group punishment for one person's mistake, which is important. It's actually a really important part of Army training, because if you're in battle and you make a mistake, you're going to cost the life of the person next to you.
True.
And so it does affect the way that we treat the finer details down the line. Yeah. So there was one time where you have these things called customs and courtesies, and that you're supposed to stand up when a drill sergeant walks in the room and stand at ease. So the person who was the CQ fire guard is what they call it. You're basically up waiting because you need to have a guard to make sure your rifles aren't stolen, so that personnel isn't disappeared, et cetera, et cetera. And so we had one girl who was very whiny and not the brightest bulb, in the room. So she decided, as she was sitting there, to stay out of uniform, as in she wasn't wearing the full PT uniform. She was in flip-flops. And then, which is it's a definite no-go. You don't do that sort of stuff. And then when the drill sergeant came in to get the count to make sure everything was right, she decided to stay there sitting at her desk with her feet propped up on the desk.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And it had to be 2 a.m. But you best believe all of us were pulled out of the room downstairs outside and just made to suffer for her mistake.
Wow.
Then it happens, man.
Yeah.
But there's it's mostly mental. The challenges are very much mental. The physical aspect is, people struggle with it because people come to the Army with different activity levels. There was a girl who could only do 3 push-ups when she started. And she passed by the end. They made sure to get her there, too.
Wow. So
the things that you struggle with, their drill sergeants do become very helpful. But it's going to be hard work to get you there from yourself. Like it's a commitment that you have to make for yourself. But for the most part, it's like academic training, learning the Army things like how to read a map, how to dress a wound, certain things. And then the rest of it is going through different training obstacles, courses, as far as like, like I had to climb up Jacob's ladder, which is 200 feet off the ground with no protection.
Wow.
And so you have to climb up, over, and back down.
Whoa.
And it's 200 feet is very high.
No, thank you.
High.
Oh, man.
My gosh. And the only thing up top the only thing at the bottom to break your fall is thick padding. And they said too, like if you fall, you're not going to die, but you'll definitely break something.
Oh, jeez. Which body part would you like to break today?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the girls almost fell because she was 5 foot. And if that, she was tiny, tiny. And the rungs are oddly spaced. So some are really close together. Some are very far apart. And you have to navigate how to get up on those rungs and get over. And as she was coming down the other side, she almost fell off like halfway through.
Oh.
And we all just like, oh. And your heart moves up into your throat. You're just like, oh, no.
Oh, my gosh.
It's doable. I mean, what I told myself through basic training is, because it sucked, I did not enjoy basic training. But overall, I did not enjoy basic training. But I had to remember how many people had gone through before me with less training, with less abilities, and still made it through. And with just kind of repeating that in my head over and over and over again was enough to get me through to the end. Because it's only 10 weeks. Like there is an end point. It's just another thing you have to do to jump through hoops to be a soldier in the Army.
Yeah, I love it. I totally get it. That sounds obviously way, way more physical. But what I'm hearing is just like the mental aspect of it. There is an end point.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like studying for a bunch of finals. And when you have 3 finals on the same day.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
You'll get it, but it's going to be a lot of work.
Exactly. So you mentioned AIT before, Advanced Individual Training. What's that?
So AIT is where you learn the job that you'll be doing.
Okay.
For me, that was going to the School of Music, which is in Little Creek, Virginia. And for us, for the Army, it's a 10-week course. For Marines and Navy, it's a 6-month course. But again, as I said before, they work on recruiting musicians who have already well-studied music. And so you don't have to do the 6-month course. And for that, though, as my platoon sergeant at the time, this is right before they put drill sergeants back at AIT, but the platoon sergeant I had said, basic training is where they take the humanity out of you, and AIT is where we put it back in, which was a great change of pace. I was talked to like a person and not like a slug underneath someone's shoe. And but it was really great. So it's separated into 3 different parts as well, where you have in the beginning, you're under a lot of restrictions. You don't get to go anywhere in uniform, out of uniform, Like you don't get to dress in civilians at any point. Your outfit is your uniform. But you still get to hang out and talk to people, whatever. And you mostly focus on getting your instrument, which they issue you your instrument for the Army. You can bring your own, and I certainly got mine as quickly as possible. But you come in, do an incoming AMPA to see where you're at, where you've come in. Now, keep in mind, we play an instrument with no back pressure, and everything is lip controlled, mouth controlled. And you just haven't touched your instrument at all for the last 10 weeks. Like, I consider myself a pretty competent flutist, but my lips were shaking like crazy, trying to form an airstream after being so long without any kind of playing at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was mostly getting reaccustomed, and it was a lot of practicing, many, many hours to practice, which is fantastic. So you focus a lot on what they call MPT time, which is MPT is a mixed performance. It's basically a chamber music group, a mixed performance team. And so I played in the wind quintet, and we worked a lot on that. There was also the concert band aspect where we all played in a concert band and performed a program at the end of AIT. And then you have your warrior tasks and battle drills, because again, we still are soldiers and we're required to know how to do, everything that's required for us in battle. And then the other part is just kind of private lessons and figuring out what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot like college in many ways that I felt, with some extra like medical training involved, like how to plug a lung,
Yeah.
in case it gets shot or something. So I learned how to do that. I learned how to do combatives again. And like, it's basically MMA stuff on the ground sort of things. But I also got to play my instrument a ton and really focused a lot on the performance of playing rather than just playing, which I thought was really cool because I know, I've studied with really fantastic teachers and they absolutely know what they're doing, but they train for the orchestral style of playing, which you don't necessarily need to move. You don't really care too much about transitions from things, but the Army is very much about putting on a show because we try to appeal to everyone. And most people nowadays, they like the construct that is like modern concerts. So like if you go to a Taylor Swift concert, there's going to be blocking, there's going to be lights and fireworks and different things. Transitions become super important in the Army. And so, they teach you how to do those things and they teach you how to incorporate media and arrange your own music and do sorts of things that can help contribute to your unit once you get out. And it's really cool. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it sounds very much like a pop concert. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, just like you said, the lighting, the choreography, the switches between, stage left or stage right. I can see how, the traditional music school wouldn't necessarily even offer that, especially to what we do.
Right.
So that's cool to see music in a new light from you being a classically trained flutist.
Right. Now, I found it fascinating. And I do wish more places would start to incorporate that kind of thing. Because, classical music these days has been waning in popularity with the masses. And I think that is one way that we can bring people back into the fold.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, that's amazing. Because a lot of, topics are out there now. Just how do we bring the masses to the orchestral world? Like, ticket sales are down. How do we please the current audience? And so, I totally agree. So you were talking about plugging a lung and learning how to plug a lung. When you're learning about the anatomy of the body and learning how to heal it or help wounds or things like that, did you find anything fascinating that you could apply to what we do as musicians and how we have to be aware of our bodies?
Well, it does teach you to be aware because you have to be able to identify these things in yourself should they happen. Like if there's something going wrong, you need to know how to fix it if you can, and that does directly tie into what we do as musicians. A lot of us have hyper awareness of where our bodies are at any given point with the instrument in our hand. I don't know about you. You have fantastic posture, but I'm always thinking about it when I'm playing because I slouch like crazy. So it does remind you to be aware.
Yeah, no, I just kind of wanted to pull that little nugget out to the top in case there was, I don't know, a student right now who's learning about the anatomy of the body in their biology class, and taking flute lessons from their professor to just be aware and make those connections while you're studying.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really cool.
Body mapping is something that I have gotten into lately, especially thanks to Lee Pearson, who's been plugging it all over Facebook and whatnot. And I find that all of it is really helpful for kind of learning how to hold your instrument and hold your body while you play your instrument.
Yeah, for sure. So putting aside this crazy quarantine world in which we live in right now, what does your schedule look like as an active U.S. Army flutist?
So every unit is going to be different in the needs that they need of you. In this particular unit, there's a shortage of flute players Army-wide, and so the responsibilities vary so much. So for me, I'll do PT in the mornings or in the afternoons. Sometimes it's group physical training. Sometimes it's individual physical training. And, we just kind of work it into our schedule as we can. And after that, we go into rehearsal mode. So a lot of times we'll come in and be a concert band rehearsal or a polka band rehearsal or an MPT rehearsal, et cetera, et cetera. And we kind of figure out our day. And then after that, a lot of us work in shops. So unlike the rest of the Army, the band, because we're so niche in our needs, we also do our own shop work. So we're kind of a hybrid MOS. And the best way I could say it, MOS being the name of our jobs. So I am a 42 Romeo, which is my MOS, which is a Army musician. And we also have to take the role of a 42 Alpha, which is like administrative work, like HR is pretty much what they are. And so we do that. So my job in this current unit is to work in administration. So I process everyone's paperwork. I edit awards. I do all kinds of just the background stuff to make sure the soldiers have what they need to be successful in the Army. And then after that, we go to lunch. Our lunches are long and I love it. It's 11:30 to 1. So
nice.
Yeah, it's great. And then from there, it's whatever rehearsals after that we need to accomplish for whatever group, and then practice time. So practice is actually built into my workday, which is fantastic. Because I know you know how it is. You get off work and you still have to play your instrument to make sure you've still have your chops. And lucky for me, I get it as part of my workday. So I don't have to stay up late at night practicing my flute.
Oh, that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very cool. So I just hear how excited you are about this role. And you've said, I think at least 3 or 4 times, I love my job. Mm-hmm. And since you've been in it for how long now?
3 years.
Okay, 3 years. Why does it feel longer than that?
Yeah, it feels like forever, doesn't it? It feels like that to me too.
Okay.
And I think it's just because of the number of different things I've had to do. I'm a flute player, but I've had to learn fife because I play in like the old guard type style of fifing. Uh-huh. And then I've also had to play bari sax in a jazz band. And so flute, I play flute and piccolo, baritone sax for jazz band stuff. I have to do a bunch of different random groups like polka band for Oktoberfest. And I do a lot of things that keeps my day interesting. And it's a lot, but, it helps me keep me artistically grounded.
Mm-hmm. So I guess I was saying, trying to figure out this timeline and everything, because since you have been in this career knee deep for a while, who is a really good candidate, for this career path? If there is somebody who was interested in this field, how would you advise them?
So if you're the kind of person that has never really done strenuous exercise, I would recommend you start. Women in particular tend to have a lot of issues with basic training. So, if you're a woman and you're thinking of getting in, I would really work on perfecting your running form, working on hip stabilization, because hip injuries are extremely common for women. I actually got out of basic training with 2 hip fractures.
Wow.
And just kind of being in shape and being prepared to have someone yell at you. So, I would definitely research what basic training looks like so you can see it. Because it's one thing to hear me talk about it. It's completely different to see a drill sergeant right in your face yelling at you. And then after that, musically, the requirements for being a musician aren't that high. We've been trying to recruit from higher level players, but for what basically bottom barrel you have to be is basically a good high school graduate. So if you are a good musician, especially in the Texas area, if you're that kind of musician, you would be a shoo-in for the Army as far as getting in and maintaining that. Mm. And, familiarize yourself with quickly prepared music, because that's where a lot of people struggle with on the AMPA, on the audition process, is this having 24 hours to prepare something. So pick an excerpt or an etude or something and just really work on it for 24 hours to get it to a playable level the next day. Obviously pick something that's doable. The stuff in the packet's not impossible. A lot of it's standard rep that I'd already played many times over, and it's doable, but you just need to practice that skill of learning stuff quickly And after that, it's just basic practicing and knowing your instrument. And that's basically it.
Cool. Is there any, I know this is not off topic, but I'm kind of putting you on the spot. Are there any resources? You keep bringing up the mental aspect. Have you read a book or have you listened to a podcast or anything that you think would fit well into preparing the person mentally for boot camp or this line of work?
I mean, there are blogs that you can certainly read about that gives you tips and tricks. I'm sure there are endless resources. But to be frank, I was kind of ready for the craziness of basic training. I think the way that North Texas operates, even though they don't get in your face and scream at you, the pressure is there. The same kind of pressure is there to excel at whatever you're doing. And so for me, whenever I had a drill sergeant in my face, it would take a lot for me to not laugh just because I'd had things like that before on occasion. It's this is nothing, you know?
Yeah.
You think you're bad, you should see my professor. She's really a wonderful lady, but
Yeah,
she's definitely on the old school kind of the wonderful thing that really helps with performing under pressure. Mm-hmm. And it ends up being that sort of thing at basic training, but worse.
Yeah. No, that's fair. No, that's really good that you made that connection. So since we're talking about, people who might be considering this career path, just a quick interjection. I was actually talking with Sergeant First Class Daniel McBride this morning. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he followed up and he said, I heard, that you and Allison will be recording soon. Has that happened? And I said, actually, this morning it's going down. So he's the audition coordinator for the Southwest and Central United States. And he says that first, if anyone is interested in learning more about the audition process, whether it be for active duty or reserve guard positions, they can visit goarmy.com/band, which I think you mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then second, he states that the active duty regional bands do currently offer student loan repayment for flute players selected for the program.
Right.
Yeah. So
what is it? Up to $60,000 in student loan repayment.
Yeah. I mean, very nice incentives.
Yeah, the Army tends to offer really wonderful incentives for being in active duty. Unfortunately, I didn't get to partake in them because I went to the Guard first, and you're considered prior service when you move to active. So no bonus for me. But for people that are getting in for the first time and are looking for, stable work, and they want to travel, they like traveling, and, they like trying new things and learning new skills in far fewer hours as being a civilian musician. It's a good life. You get full benefits, you get the incentives to enlist, you get retirement, essentially what's a 401k, essentially. And you get free medical healthcare sort of things. I don't pay out of pocket for anything.
Wow.
When I re-injured my hip, I got physical therapy and it didn't cost a dime out of my pocket. Nice. No copays, nothing. And the same thing with any other kind of health concerns, like even medications, you don't pay anything for it. So it's a really nice, stable living that has a fairly set amount of hours per week, more give and take, unless you do something special. And it's consistent and artistic. For me, artistically worth it to go that route. So if you're looking for, general playing, make money as a musician, and also looking for an extra challenge, it's perfect for people who want to do that. Because I'm sure you have to pay for your health care, right?
I don't even know what health care is anymore. What's health insurance? I mean, because as a self-employed, person, the bronze level alone to insure my husband and I are through the roof. And it's goodness. And I'm just like, are you kidding me?
The Army does, and any branch for that matter, provides unlimited access to medical care. Mm-hmm. And so it's whatever you need. As long as you could still fulfill the duties of your job, you get as much health care as you could possibly need. Mm-hmm. There's also legal representatives. So, a lot of people talk about JAG. So there's always lawyers on hand to help you with free, as a free lawyer. And there's different things. There's a ton of benefits to being in the military. That's important not just as a musician, but just as a daily functioning person.
Mm.
I mean, shoot, they give me money for my apartment. Like,
Oh, for like living expenses.
yes, they give me a housing payment because I have a daughter. So I get payment for housing. And then I also get what they call like a standard of living payment.
Okay.
So because there's a set income for your rank, but obviously the costs of living change depending on where you're stationed.
Mm.
Like if I move to Washington in Tacoma, those average apartments are like $1,200. Here,
Wow.
it's like, $500. So it's a bit of a difference. So, but in general, they do provide very well for you to be a functional person and not just a musician kind of doing what you can to stay afloat.
That's cool. So I'm just hearing that they really care who you are as a person, and they just are giving you these packages to make sure that your life is, fairly comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's cool. So as we wrap up this amazing conversation, are there any last sentiments that you would like to share with the audience? It could be just as broad as when I was a student, I wish I would have known this. Or
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
In college, I had no idea that this was an option. My goal was to be in a Sierra band, one of the special bands in DC, and do this and that. And with having a daughter and a husband that worked in Pennsylvania, I knew that was not going to be a possibility. And then afterwards, I randomly found out that this job exists, and I had no idea. I would have done this from the beginning if I knew that it existed. And so, I really do appreciate you doing these podcasts to put that option out there, because it is one that's not often encouraged for people to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
But the field is extremely engaging, keeps you in shape. It gives you free college if you want it. Like I could still go out and get another degree for free, 100% for free. And it's allowed me to create a very stable life for myself without having to work 1,000 hours. Like I worked maybe 80 hours a week at least as a civilian musician. And here it's pretty much a normal 40-hour work week. So I get to work for half the hours and make twice as much. And so it's really a really good thing for a lot of people if you need some stability, especially as a musician. It's something that I hope many people consider.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that word stability because, and just like you, I did not know. Here I am at 34 going on to 35 and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like there's a stable full-time music job where I get to be active, play my flute, and I get health benefits. Like, why did I not hear of this earlier?
That's great. That's fantastic.
And so I just thought, shoot, like if there's somebody out there, even one person who just, they're in the same boat thinking, oh, I didn't know that this was even an option for me. And they just happen to come across this content, then it's one more option to consider for their career. And, why not?
Yeah. You've really got nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm. No, that's so cool. So in the last portion of the show, I do this fun little segment called Picks. Do you have a pick for today?
Sure. Well, one of my favorite books that I'm reading right now is Goggins, who was this big military person. He served in many branches at like elite levels. Like he was a Navy SEAL, he was a Ranger, he was a big dude who had a lot of suffering as a kid. And he talked about building the resilience to do the incredible things that he's done. And so that's one of the books that I'm reading right now. He's got a kind of an autobiography out. The name will come to me eventually. I can't remember it at the moment. But after that, I have to plug the 77th Army Band, which is my band that I play in. And so they have a Facebook page and a YouTube page. And you can find, if you're looking to see what a concert looks like, you can find old recordings of major concerts, Veterans Day, Christmas, and see what I mean when I talk about staging and popular music kind of style blended into classical music. And then also things about like working out and all of the fun things outside of music that we get to do.
Oh, perfect. Very cool. So my pick for today is the website, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, is called Etsy, ETSY. Are you familiar with it?
I love Etsy.
Oh, yeah.
I love it so much.
I got into trouble with online shopping the other day, and I was just like, okay, here we go. Like, I don't like this bill, but I love these, products that I bought. So why not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But just, like the personalization and the chic cuteness, to a lot of these shops. It's just really special gifts that you can give friends and family members.
Yes.
Yeah.
You pretty much can find anything you want, from gorgeous handmade bows to like mugs with expletives on it. Like it's got everything on that website. It's fantastic.
Yeah. It gets me into trouble. And they just have such a great collection.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. Well, thank you so much, Allison, for your time, talents, and energy. And I'm just so appreciative of everything you've shared with us today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to do this. I am really glad that I get to help put the word out there about this kind of job and how important it is for people that are looking for something new.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend and
wonderful quarantine.
Today's sponsor is brought to you by J&K Productions. Did you know that not only are they a production company for podcasts, but they are a recording company for musicians? Any musical recording needs that you may have, J&K Productions can fulfill that need. They have all the necessary equipment and expertise to record your next flute recording for college or graduate auditions, competitions, summer festivals, or a flute album. J&K Productions can record any setup imaginable, from solo flute, small chamber, flute and piano, and much more. Consider J&K Productions for your next recording project. Contact them at jkproductions.media. Thank you for listening to the Flute 360 podcast. For more information, please visit HeidiKBegay.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review in the iTunes store. Let's talk about flute.